Hello.
Hello, Khempo. How are you?
Okay, now you can hear me, right?
I can hear you. Yes.
Okay. Oops. So, okay. All right. So we have so far done, I think, until the instruction number 16, right?
Yes, that's right.
Mhm. Okay. So, you know, as one can see that all of these instructions are naturally based on bodhicitta. It's naturally based on more on relative bodhicitta than ultimate bodhicitta. There are, you know, instructions on ultimate bodhicitta which, you know, will come up. So because this teaching is teaching on a bodhisattva's way of life, you know, so it's called 37 practices of bodhisattva, which actually means, in my understanding, it means these are the practices that one can only accomplish through, you know, a bodhicitta, through both ultimate and relative bodhicitta. And without way one can accomplish the path to enlightenment, because the very heart of the path is none other than bodhicitta, right? So we need to keep this in mind. Therefore, you know, the instructions, there may be 37 or even more, but in essence, we are really, you know, talking about what can bodhicitta or how can bodhicitta help us, which means it's very much like, you know, talking about the benefit of accomplishment of loving kindness and compassion and of relative bodhicitta, so to speak, all of this. That's really important for us. In short, actually, it just means that all we need to do as a practitioner is really focus on, you know, on the growth of our this very own loving kindness and the compassion nature of the mind. And at the same time, then focus on the nature of these bodhisattva vows, these bodhicittas. That's really very much it. As long as we, you know, focused on these instructions, then I think we can really bring some kind of growth, some level of growth, I should say, in our practice. And if we lack that, then we will lack the growth in our practice. So it's really important to keep in mind, you know, that we need to instead of working outwardly or working with outer things, working with outer conditions such as like people, place, or wealth, it's time to look more like, inside of our own mind. And really recognize, our own emotions and what they do to us. Because everything we experience from the emotion point of view, from feeling point of view, from the day we were born up until this time, up until this age, it's not really because of the people around us. It's not because of the country you lived in. It's not really because of them, actually. They did, let's say, in some ways they did sort of played a role in terms of just being a condition. But in reality, it's not because of that, but it's because of my own, mind, state of the mind. Like who I am or what I am is not because of other people, correct? But it's because of me. And that me is not my body, it's not my speech. That me, that people identify you is your, correct, your behavior, which is the behavior of your mind. If people like you, if people dislike you, it's not because of how you look, actually. It's because of your, let's say because of your mind. But we never say that. We never say we love your mind or we like your mind. We just say we like you or we don't like you. But they are not really referring to our physical, appearance at all. If I am good, if I'm a good person, that's because I have a good mind or good heart. And if I'm a bad person, that's because I have a bad heart, which in Buddhism we say mind. So see, how everything comes down to, to the state of the mind. So these are important to keep in mind, when we are reading these things and to try to really, that's what he has been saying. Like he says, how to behave with your enemy. He was talking about how to behave with people who abuse you, who humiliate you, who shows jealousy, who shows anger, who shows pride to you, how to behave with them, right? And that's because, the way to behave with them is, not with our physical appearance, but rather, with our mind, actually. The only way to behave with them is when I behave in a very positive way. If my attitude, if my mental attitude is positive, if my mental attitude is good, then these things should not really affect me at all. And I would not retaliate, right? I would not, backlash all these things. That's pretty much what we, sort of did so far. So I'm just concluding, okay.
Bueno, hasta ahora hemos cubierto los primeros 16 versos que en general hablan de la bodhicitta relativa, sobre todo, y no tanto de la bodhicitta absoluta. Las 37 prácticas de un bodhisattva, de lo que nos hablan es de cómo por medio del desarrollo de la bodhicitta relativa al principio y última también, podemos lograr avanzar en el camino hacia la iluminación. Entonces podríamos preguntarnos, ¿cómo es que la bodhicitta puede ayudarnos? Y todo lo que tenemos que hacer es enfocarnos en la compasión y en el amor bondadoso de nuestra mente. Y tratar de conservar de la mejor manera posible los votos del bodhisattva. Esto nos llevaría entonces a un crecimiento en nuestra práctica o en nuestro desarrollo espiritual. Si no cuidamos eso, pues entonces no podremos tener ese crecimiento espiritual. También nos dirige, digamos, a buscar en el interior y no a buscar fama o riqueza o apariencias externas, sino reconocer qué es lo que está sucediendo en nuestra mente, cuál es nuestra actitud mental, cuáles son las emociones que nosotros estamos teniendo y cómo esas emociones nos afectan, nos pueden hacer daño. Y esas emociones nos pueden hacer daño no por lo externo, no es por la gente o el país o los enemigos que tengamos, sino por el estado mental que generan en nuestra mente. Cuando alguien dice que gusta de mí, que le caigo bien, probablemente no se refiere a mi cuerpo ni a mi habla, sino más bien a mi comportamiento mental. Nosotros decimos, tú me gustas, pero lo que hay detrás de ese tú me gustas es, me gusta tu actitud mental. Si alguien me quiere, si yo soy una persona querida o apreciada, digamos, y soy una buena persona, eso es porque tengo un buen corazón, pero pues para los tibetanos, buen corazón significa una buena mente, un buen estado mental. Entonces, también en estos primeros versos nos respondimos la pregunta de cómo comportarnos con nuestros enemigos. Y lo que nos dicen estos versos es que si nosotros logramos mantener una actitud positiva en nuestras mentes, pues entonces lo que digan o hagan nuestros enemigos no nos afectará tanto y no nos veremos en la necesidad o con el deseo de buscar venganza o castigar al otro por su comportamiento. Simplemente no nos importa y lo dejamos pasar. Entonces, bueno, esto es más o menos un resumen de estos primeros 16 versos de lo que hemos estudiado hasta el momento. Ok, Khempo.
All right. So now we'll move on. And then now we are starting, I think, with the instruction number 17. So instruction number 17, as you can see in the root text, is about, it's about generating compassion for people with, for people with pride, let's say. It's very much similar to what we have been saying. When out of, let's say, why do people sort of, look down upon other people or insult people is out of pride. Ego, actually, ego is a good word. Ego makes us do a lot of things. And one of the very common things that ego cause us to do is to, always humiliate people, insult people, that. So, so that's the doing of the ego, actually, so to speak. Here, as a practitioner, right? Not as a regular person, but as a person, a practitioner, and especially as a bodhisattva, by knowing that this person is, is trying to insult me, trying to bring me down or humiliate me because of his ego or her ego. So it may not be really his intention, but because of his emotions, that's what causing him to do those things. So when we realize as a bodhisattva, let's say as a bodhisattva, as a Dharma practitioner, when we realize that person's situation or that person's state of the mind, then it helps us to not feel angry, but rather feel compassion to that person, like a small child, I guess, like a small kid, because we understand that small kid or an ignorant person do a lot of things out of ignorance. But we don't really, mind them, because we know that they don't really mean it, but they're doing this out of ignorance, so to speak. So that's what, this instruction is saying, that and then other thing actually in the root text is it says, in a way, these people, they are like a teacher to us, who teaches us, or yes, actually teaches us, the fault of negative emotions. So we should learn from them, is what he's saying, right? In the root text, he's saying that it actually, Shantideva says in his book also that, how are we supposed to tame our emotions if there are no such kind of people who, triggers our emotions? Those people who trigger anger, jealousy, pride in me, they're triggering it. They're not causing me the anger or jealousy or the pride. Those are the nature of my own mind, but they just become the trigger, so to speak. And because they help us to, realize these emotions and help us to find a path or means to deal with them, this is why they, like in the mind training teaching, these kind of people and circumstances should be taken as a path, not as an obstacle or as an enemy or as an, yes, as not as, yes, harm, or as someone, as individual who's harming you. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, okay.
I'm here.
So that's it.
Ok, bueno, entonces ahora vamos a continuar con el verso número
Can't hear you.
17.
Is it me or is it you? One of us, we are breaking up. Did you
It's
hear
you.
everything
It
I
says
said?
here that your bandwidth is low. It's on your part today. Yesterday, last time was my part.
Okay.
Entonces, el verso 17 dice así: si una persona igual o inferior a ti te denigra debido a su orgullo, colocarlo como lo harías con tu maestro espiritual, con respeto, en la coronilla, es la práctica de los bodhisattvas. Y aquí podríamos preguntarnos, ¿por qué alguien nos insulta? ¿Por qué alguien nos trata mal? Y la razón es su orgullo o su ego, ¿sí? Esa es la razón por la que la gente, digamos, lo ataca a uno. Como practicante, como bodhisattva, entonces yo debería no molestarme, sino tratar de desarrollar compasión por esta persona, porque me doy cuenta que su actuar está basado en unas emociones y que eso es perjudicial para él. Debemos entonces ver a estas personas como maestros para nosotros, que nos muestran la falla o los defectos de las emociones perturbadoras. Shantideva en su libro lo dice, cómo entrenarnos en la paciencia, por ejemplo, si no hay quien nos produzca impaciencia, si no hay alguien que nos genere la impaciencia, entonces la forma correcta de ver a estas personas que nos insultan o que nos tratan mal no es como un obstáculo, sino verlas ni como un enemigo, sino verlas como nuestro camino. Y no hay entonces que molestarnos por ellas, sino tratar de desarrollar amor bondadoso por ellas. Okay, Khempo.
All right, so number 18, instruction number 18. Instruction number 18 is basically about, not giving up of sentient beings. It's like commitment for aspiration bodhicitta. There are two kinds of bodhicitta, relative bodhicitta, the aspiration relative bodhicitta and the application relative bodhicitta. This particular is, line instruction is, I think, more about, commitment for the aspiration bodhicitta. So that's why it says that no matter what the circumstances the bodhisattvas come across, they never ever give up sentient beings, even for the sake of their own life. So in short, it means that, a bodhisattva, whether it is about their practice or whether it is about helping someone, they completely disregard the, these difficult circumstances in their life, pains, suffering that they come across during this, path, during this kind of practice. They completely disregard that. This we can understand if we, thought about the life stories of great masters, great practitioners like Milarepa, Marpa, or any other, great yogis. At the same time, these bodhisattvas, these great practitioners, are able to, face these kind of most difficult obstacles and circumstances is because of their power of their bodhicitta, I would like to think. When the bodhicitta, relative bodhicitta, is so very developed, so very strong in oneself, one is able to completely disregard the physical sufferings, completely able to disregard the physical sufferings. But when we lack, this kind of very strong, nature, power, or potential of loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta, we are not able to face the pain, suffering that one faces, even physically, actually, let alone the mental difficulties. So, in other words, it actually says that, it's saying that the reason why this very good practitioner, we name them as a bodhisattva, are able to disregard the physical pains and the mental pain is because of their accomplishment of loving kindness and compassion, and then as well as the bodhicitta, especially the relative bodhicitta of the aspiration. So therefore, we as, a Dharma practitioner, I think it's better word, Dharma practitioner. Like I said in the, in the beginning of my teaching, really it's very important to focus on, on developing of our that loving kindness compassion. then we will develop this potential in our mind, or we can say courage, in our mind to face all kinds of difficult and the most difficult circumstances on the path to enlightenment. Two things are there I would like to think. One of the ground cause for that kind of potential or power is renunciation. When the renunciation is very, very strong, we are able to do that. The other, of course, is the presence of bodhicitta. So the presence of renunciate mind and the presence of bodhicitta, which means like compassion. That is the, source of the courage of the bodhisattvas for being able to, remain infinite time and benefit infinite sentient beings is because of these two qualities. So in short, then this is an instruction saying that we need to focus on these two, qualities of the mind, the renunciate state of the mind, and then of course the bodhisattva state of, or bodhicitta state of the mind. Okay.
Bueno, entonces ahora seguimos con el verso 18 que dice: aunque sumergidos en pobreza y siempre despreciado, afligido por enfermedades y demonios, sin desánimo, tomar para ti las faltas y el dolor de todos los seres, esa es la práctica de los bodhisattvas. Este verso entonces nos recuerda que no debemos abandonar a los seres sensibles por ninguna razón, ¿sí? Tenemos las dos bodhicittas, la bodhicitta absoluta y la bodhicitta relativa, y pues este verso se refiere a la bodhicitta de aspiración, a la relativa, en que nunca debemos olvidarnos de los seres sensibles, aún a costa de nuestra propia vida, ¿sí? Los bodhisattvas no se amilanan por las dificultades, por la enfermedad, el dolor, el hambre, todo eso. Podemos, por ejemplo, recordar a los grandes yogis como Marpa o Milarepa. Ellos pudieron enfrentar los obstáculos por medio de su bodhicitta relativa, por el amor por todos los seres sensibles. Y uno igual también puede sobreponerse a todas las dificultades físicas por medio de la bodhicitta relativa. Si no tenemos una bodhicitta relativa bien fundamentada, bien desarrollada, entonces probablemente no podremos sobreponernos ni a las dificultades físicas ni a las dificultades mentales. Como practicante del Dharma, entonces, ¿qué podemos usar? Pues usar las herramientas que llamamos la renuncia y la bodhicitta. Con esto entonces obtenemos el coraje para poder enfrentar todas las dificultades que encontramos en el camino. Ok, Khempo.
You done? Okay.
Yes.
Now which number 19, right? Instruction number 19. Instruction number 19 is about, generating renunciation toward worldly gains. So what that meant is, how do we, how do we develop this ego, this pride in us is concerned through few things. First, for example, source of developing ego, arrogance in oneself is by becoming very famous. So fame is one of the source. The other source is richness, the wealth. These two. There are many actually, and then maybe good look is another source. High caste is another source. Like people have this some people are born with this kind of ego that I belong to this high caste, or I belong to the noble family, you know. So these are very, what do you call that? It's completely meaningless, actually. Like, what does it really mean by this thing called caste, you know? But in this world, people believe so much in these things as when it comes to the caste. So people with those belonging to the higher caste, that they very kind of, they just without any reason develop this ego in them that we are noble ones, you know, then we deserve these things and these people don't deserve these things. It's such a pointless kind of thing. At the same time, then it's because of the wealth. Because in a world, people think people with wealth deserves all those things, and people who are poor do not deserve. It's actually very unfair, right? But that's the ego thing. Ego system is working that way. And so the fame, the wealth, the caste, whatever, you know, it kind of triggers this very false attachment in us, very false attachment, you know. And this very false attachment is the ego. And people depend so much on them, and because of that, they actually suffer so much. So here, you know, he's actually saying that we need to see that how the worldly gains are so very pointless. He's saying we need to see that wealth is pointless, fame is pointless, and then anything that develops this kind of very false, proud, ego, emotion is all pointless, actually. There are many ways, as a Buddhist, there are so many ways of actually seeing that, right? That how this so-called fame, wealth, and all those other things, the worldly, you know, gains are so like shallow actually from inside. But people don't see the shallowness of those people. They just see, what do they see? They see the, what do you call that? They see the two things, you know, one, there's a word for that. They only see the, I guess they only see the wealth, but they don't see the shallowness of it. Like you see, you know, all these fancy things, and people, meaning like fancy cars, fancy clothes, fancy houses, all that. But they don't really see the state of the mind who own that. If you look into their own mind, state of mind, everything's so very shallow, so to speak, is what he's actually saying. In reality, that person and me, there is no difference when it comes down to our state of the mind. He is or she is as poor as me. But from the outlook, you know, that's what we see. We see all that fancy stuff. Anyways, so that's the, way how, I guess, the worldly gain sort of, that's how the worldly gain, worldly gain trap us or this word, you know, they trap us. They, what do? They, okay, trap, maybe. There's another word now, I can't remember that. Because we are not able to see the shallowness nature of all that worldly gain. So we get attracted to that. They kind of, you know, yeah, attract us to that, so to speak. And that's why then, you know, we, let's say, work so much, people work so hard for those things to gain. And then, you know, also that. So anyway, so here is just saying that, that the worldly gains, we, in Dharma, we speak about 8 worldly gains, you remember? Actually, it's focusing on those 8 worldly gains in short. Once when we focus on these 8 worldly gains, then we realize that, you know, that how shallow these things are, how shallow the fame is, how shallow those praises that you gain is, you know, how shallow the wealth is. Because, so that is what he's saying. Then at the same time, one is able to reduce our, you know, attachment to these worldly gains. And that's how we then are able to experience more renunciation and more satisfaction, actually. We really experience more satisfaction. And through that, we, you know, become more happier. Let's say there is more happiness in the state of the mind, is what he's saying, I guess. Yeah, that's how they lure us, right? That's the word, lure. Same. Anyways, same thing, attract or lure.
Bueno, ahora seguimos entonces con el verso 19, que dice: aunque te vuelvas famoso y muchos te reverencian, y obtengas riquezas igual a Vaisravana, el dios de la riqueza, ver que la fortuna mundana carece de esencia y no tener arrogancia es la práctica de los bodhisattvas. Entonces, este verso nos habla de la renuncia a todas las ganancias mundanas, digamos. Pero primero empecemos por analizar cómo es que el ego se alimenta, digamos, o de dónde saca el ego, sí, material para creerse mejor. Y pues los ingredientes más apreciados por el ego son la fama, la riqueza, la belleza física o la apariencia, el estatus social, todas esas cosas. Pero ¿qué significa esto? ¿Por qué enorgullecerse una persona por tener algunas de esas anhelos mundanos, digamos? Por ejemplo, el dinero. ¿Cuál es la diferencia? Pues el dinero divide a la gente entre ricos y pobres, pero pues esto es muy injusto, ¿sí? Porque pues esto genera un apego muy grande y el apego es sufrimiento. Deberíamos entonces mejor enfocarnos en ver cómo todas esas ganancias mundanas, ¿sí? El poder, la belleza, el dinero, el estatus, son totalmente insustanciales, no tienen realmente ningún sentido. ¿Qué pasa entonces? Que la gente solamente se enfoca en lo externo, en la fachada, digamos, pero no ven el interior de las personas. Si pudieran ver el interior de las personas, entonces, digamos, una persona pobre vería a una persona rica, pero en vez de verla con envidia y con celos porque es muy rica y pudiera ver su estado mental, podría decir, ah, él es igual de pobre a mí, ¿sí? Y entonces no generaría ningún tipo de celos porque se daría cuenta que que la riqueza no hace que esa persona tenga un mejor estado mental, sino que su estado mental sigue siendo muy pobre. Entonces, hay que tener, digamos, presente que esas ganancias mundanas nos atrapan o nos atraen muchísimo. Por eso hablamos de los 8 anhelos mundanos. Pero en cambio, si nos damos cuenta qué tan vacíos o pueriles son, pues entonces no los estaremos buscando, no estaremos entonces desbocados buscando esas ganancias mundanas, y eso nos traería una satisfacción y una felicidad en nuestra mente. Ok, Khempo.
You know, it actually is true that from the outlook, we get lured by all these, what do you call that? You know, there is a word, colorful is the word. Everything looks very colorful. That's what I was trying to say. It's very true, you know, but we, because it's so very colorful and we sort of, you know, have this very fancy idea about their colorful life. That's what I was earlier trying to say. Everything looks so very colorful life. But we all know that all these world famous people, they have very colorful life, but their life really, most of their life is a mess actually. It may sound very cliche, but it is actually to some extent is very true. They are very, of course, I'm not saying everybody's like that. There are exceptions, but most of them are drug addicts. Most of them are, you know, the language, they have their own language. You have no idea the language they use. It's so, but then they look very colorful. Everything looks very colorful and we get lured to that. That's what the shallow part meant. But when you really live with those people, and then when you really think about that person, I think you will never like to be like that person. Because I've seen some people, and I'm like, I don't want to be like that person. But when I did not know that person, I was like, wow, you know, what a great life, actually. No, really. So that's the thing that he's saying, that all this worldly gain, fame, and everything, from the outlook, everything's very colorful. But then there are so many people. Anyway, so that's it about, you know, about the wealth and the fault of the wealth. When people are not able, when people become too materialistic or too materialism, and then when they only, you know, become too greedy, that's what, you know, they become actually. But then there are wise people, many wise people, who are able to deal with that. So it's not the fault of the wealth. Wealth is not fault of the wealth or the fame. It's actually a person's own fault. That person got too greedy, and that person was not, you know, skillful enough, wise enough to use their wealth, to use their life in a more meaningful way. You could use those in a much more meaningful way. So there are different ways. So we should not always think that, okay, then it meant that, you know, wealth is useless. Wealth is not useless at all, actually. But if the individual is someone who lack, you know, wisdom and compassion, let's say, perhaps then yes, the wealth may not be of that much meaningful, so to speak. So it depends. Okay.
Entonces, pues todas esas cosas, todos esos anhelos mundanos parecen muy coloridos. Esa era la palabra que estaba buscando. Y entonces nos atraen, ¿sí? Por ejemplo, pensemos en los súper ricos y famosos. Tienen una vida muy colorida y todo el mundo está interesado en saber qué hacen, dónde comen, qué casa tienen, todo eso. pero interiormente muchos de ellos son muy pobres, son drogadictos y terminan muriendo por sobredosis y todo eso. Si nosotros pudiéramos conocer estas personas súper ricas más internamente, más íntimamente, probablemente ya no nos parecería tan colorida esa vida y tan atractiva, ¿sí? Ahora, no todos son así. Hay gente, digamos, sabia, que puede vivir con la riqueza, que no se les sube a la cabeza y no se vuelven unas personas fatuas y orgullosas y pobres interiormente. Eso quiere decir que el problema no está en la riqueza en sí, el problema no es la riqueza, si nosotros generamos apego o deseo por esa riqueza, eso es lo que nos ciega. Pero la riqueza en sí no es que sea inservible, porque la podríamos entonces usar para fines benéficos, para el beneficio de los seres. Okay.
Okay, so number 20, instruction number 20. The instruction number 20 is instruction on taming the mind. I mean, this is all about taming the mind, but here he says that, you know, without taming the inner enemy. So the inner enemy is our inner emotions, but here he refers to anger. He says without taming the inner enemy, which is the real enemy, and in this case, from the emotion, he's referring to the anger. You know, by trying to tame or destroy the outer enemy, it will not work. Instead, you will have more enemies because you make more enemies by making more enemies. So anyway, it's very easy, as you can understand. Here, he may have used anger, but in general, you know, it means, you know, all kind of emotions. So the emotions are based, or they are inside our mind, be it anger, be it jealousy, be it pride, you know, all of them. It's a state of the mind. So this concept of, you know, this feeling of enemy, all that is due to our own emotions, such as like attachment, jealousy, and pride. If you look at anger, anger has attachment, anger of course has jealousy, pride, of course, you know, confusion, ignorance, right? So it's whole package. Anger is not just anger only, actually, but it is one of the most intense emotion. So that's why oftentimes people like to use anger, actually. So like it is said in all of the mind training teachings that, you know, the only way to get rid of our, let's say, of our suffering, so is really through working with our emotions. So as you can see, this is, you know, a very very profound and very vast, you know, teaching when it comes down to taming of the mind. But from time to time, it's very helpful just to, you know, remember this line. Like I oftentimes say that sometimes I try to remember lines from Bodhicharyavatara, sometimes, you know, lines like this, like when it says, you know, lines like tame your own mind, inner enemy, which is your own emotion. So then it helped me to sort of, you know, really reflect, you know, into my mind, what does that really mean? And then if I did reflect on my mind, I'm really able to see my own emotions, that how I have all these emotions in me without there being any person around me. I mean, I'm angry, I'm jealous, I have pride, without any help of any outer circumstances, right? We all feel that. Then why do you think that? Because these emotions are printed in our mind from the immemorial time, or from the time immemorial, I should say. So we have this infinite tendencies of emotions in our mind. So we don't really need, we don't really always need a person or a thing to feel those emotions. We can feel these emotions without them. But at the same time, we think, oh, my emotions are because of these people, because of these things. So then we realize it's actually not true. I'm not angry because of a person, actually, because that person did not give me the anger, or did not give me the jealousy, or the pride, or the ego, right? These emotions are there in me. And that thing or that object, whether it was a person or just some object, were just only a condition which triggered my emotions inside me. So that's why here it becomes very important to look inwardly all the time, meaning like always focus inside of our mind rather than focusing on the outer world or on the outer objects, so to say. Okay.
Bueno, ahora seguimos con el verso número 20, que dice: mientras que el enemigo de tu propio odio esté sin subyugar, aunque conquistes enemigos externos, ellos solo crecerán. En consecuencia, con una armadura de amor y compasión, subyugar tu propia mente es la práctica de los bodhisattvas. Y aquí nos habla de que mientras nosotros no logremos aplacar la ira en nosotros, que es nuestro enemigo interno, digamos, entonces tratar de aplacar los enemigos externos no funciona. Acá se usó la ira como emoción, pero pues esto es válido para cualquier tipo de emoción. Orgullo, celos, envidia, ignorancia, ¿sí? Todo eso. ¿Por qué consideramos que alguien o algo es nuestro enemigo? Por nuestro apego, nuestra ira, nuestro orgullo, nuestra ignorancia, ¿sí? Y la ira se utiliza porque, digamos, la ira es un paquete completo. La ira trae apego, trae orgullo y también trae ignorancia. Entonces, debemos entender que la única forma en la que nosotros podemos liberarnos de nuestros sufrimientos es por medio de desengancharnos de nuestras emociones. A veces es bueno, por ejemplo, recordar estrofas de las enseñanzas. El Khempo dice que él recuerda con frecuencia el Bodhicharyavatara y que nos dicen o nos recomiendan reflexionar sobre nuestra propia mente, poder ver cómo yo tengo emociones de ira, celos, orgullo, ignorancia, aún sin estar rodeado de personas. La razón es que estas emociones han estado en nuestra mente desde tiempos sin principio. Eso es a lo que llamamos ignorancia. Entonces, no necesitamos esos referentes externos para sentir las emociones. No son ellos la causa de esas emociones, las emociones están en nuestra mente, ¿sí? Ese objeto externo, sea una persona o sea una situación, lo que fuere, solo sirve de detonante de la emoción, pero la emoción, para que se pueda manifestar, ya está en nuestra mente. Entonces, lo que debemos hacer es tratar de observar la mente en vez de enfocarnos en los detonantes, en ese mundo externo. Okay, Khempo.
You know, Shantideva says regarding anger, actually, you see, this is an example he gives. For example, I want to protect my feet from being hurt. So to do that, if I decided to cover the whole earth with a shoe, it's not possible actually to cover the whole earth with a shoe. But instead, if I wore a pair of shoes, it's like covering the whole earth with, you know, with the shoe, and my feet will always be protected. In the same way, here, you know, wearing a pair of shoes is like taming my own mind. If I've tamed my mind, I've tamed all the enemy. Trying to cover the whole earth with a shoe is like, you know, is like taming the outer enemies. You know, it's not possible to do that, actually. So that's actually an example that he gives in there in his Bodhicharya Avtara, I think chapter number 6. It's actually about patience, you know, when it talks about patience. So these are very good example that he actually gives about anger or in general, any kind of emotion, actually, I guess. In short, it's true really that we have to really realize that the source of our, let's say, suffering, pain, and emotions, it's not them. It's me, actually. It's my own state of the mind. We can say karma or mind. So then why blame them, right? Why blame other people? When I can very easily, let's say, get away or get rid of the source of emotions and emotion altogether, suffering altogether, by getting rid of this inner emotion, such as like jealousy, pride, anger, then why I need to, why I need to work with outer conditions. I don't need to work with outer conditions. So the reason why so far we have not been successful in developing this kind of realization or path is because that's what we have been doing. We have always been working with the outer condition rather with the inner cause. If we uprooted the inner cause, there will be no, a result. The result will be completely uprooted. So instead of doing that, we have actually been only, cutting the branches of a tree, trying to get rid of the tree. You never will be able to get rid of the tree because you're just cutting the branches. But if you would just uproot it, the tree will never grow back on. So that is like, uproot the source of my suffering, emotion, everything, that's how we gain liberation, right? Liberation, the real liberation is liberation from suffering and the cause of suffering. So we need to realize what is causing us the suffering. That's really the ego clinging, the clinging of me, I, me, and mine, which is just a very false state of the mind. From there, all the emotions are, are born. So in short, maybe it is saying by realizing, we learn, reflect, and meditate. Through that, we realize, the emptiness nature of self, the emptiness nature of ego. Ego is a state of a mind. ego is the seventh consciousness. Seventh consciousness is called afflicted, mind or obscured mind. And that's actually a state of a mind. And it's a false state of the mind. With the help of learning, reflecting, and meditating, we are able to realize the emptiness nature of that seventh consciousness. So there are many different ways of dealing with emotion, but the best way of dealing with emotions is only through meditation. But in order to meditate, one must first learn, one must first reflect, because what we are meditating upon is we are meditating upon what we have learned and what we have reflected. Meditation is not a separate thing, actually. So when we really reflect on our knowledge and the wisdom that we have gained over and over again, that purifies, our obscurations. And this is how then it brings us to the realization of, let's say, true nature of the mind, we can say, or the ultimate bodhicitta. So, so we should really, throughout our lifetime, never stop learning. And we should not only leave it to that. We must also, as much as we can, reflect on that. And then, we must also meditate on that. Only through this, then we truly will be able to, work with our emotions or get rid of our negative emotions.
Shantideva dice que, pues, o usa un símil para hablar sobre la ira, y dice que tratar de proteger, que podemos usar dos estrategias para proteger nuestros pies. Una es cubrir toda la tierra para no hacernos daño al caminar, o simplemente cubrir nuestros pies con unos zapatos. Entonces, pues los zapatos sería como domesticar nuestra mente. Y así entonces pues no tenemos que cubrir el mundo externo para no tener ira, sino que la erradicamos de nuestra mente y así nos liberamos de todo tipo de sufrimiento. Porque el sufrimiento está en mi mente, por mis emociones. No son los detonantes externos lo que me causan el sufrimiento. Entonces no necesito trabajar con esas condiciones externas. Lo que necesito es trabajar con mis condiciones externas, con mi mente. Pero pues hasta ahora se puede decir el enfoque que hemos tenido es el de trabajar con las condiciones externas, pero esto es tan tonto como si quisiéramos acabar con un árbol y solamente le cortáramos las ramas, lo podáramos. Pues así eso no funciona, las ramas van a volver a crecer. Si queremos acabar con un árbol, tenemos que sacarlo de raíz. Y así sí nos liberamos del árbol. Entonces, pues igual debemos hacer. Nosotros entendemos que la liberación consiste en estar sin sufrimiento y sin las causas del sufrimiento. Entonces, pues trabajar con las cosas externas nos podrían aliviar un poco el sufrimiento, pero la causa del sufrimiento seguiría estando ahí. Y entonces no haríamos nada, digamos. Lo que debemos es erradicar las causas del sufrimiento y esa es nuestro ego, nuestra confusión. El ego se entiende como un estado mental confuso y está identificado, digamos, con la séptima conciencia. Entonces, para eso debemos aprender, reflexionar y meditar. Y por medio de la meditación, entonces sí podemos erradicar esa séptima conciencia. Pero, pues, la meditación no se debe entender como un acto solitario, sino que debe ser un acto que está acompañado de los dos primeros, el aprender y el reflexionar. Entonces, en ese momento ya nos podemos sentar a meditar, pero no debemos dejar de estudiar, digamos, nunca en nuestra vida, porque pues es parte del proceso de aprender, reflexionar y meditar. Entonces, todo debe ir junto y no simplemente olvidarnos de uno de estos tres aspectos. Okay.
So number 21, right? Instruction number 21 is, working with the desire. So here the example is very good. I mean, like he says, desire is like, a salty water, because a salty water can never quench your thirst. You drink water thinking that it will quench my thirst, but then it only increases your thirst. It's an example actually he gives in here. He's saying this because like we as a person, we try to satisfy ourselves by satisfying our desire. Like for example, okay, I want this thing, this new thing. So I try to satisfy myself thinking that if I satisfy my desire, then I will be satisfied. But that is not the truth, right? I mean, that's not the truth, because we all know that. After some time, you desire again something else. And then I do the same thing. I try to satisfy my desire by giving it what it desires, thinking that I will not desire again. But then again, I do the same thing. I have another desire, then it's endless. So in the mind training teachings, like this book and in Shanti Deva's book, the antidote for desire is developing satisfaction, actually. Satisfaction. Satisfaction as in, in contentment. I should learn to be content with whatever I have, actually, so to speak, right? Content. Actually, it is true that we will learn to live with whatever wealth we have. But we don't do that. Let's say we have enough wealth to live a good life, a normal good life. So then you can have a normal good life with those kind of wealth. And then if you really are able to do that, then perhaps you are a content person, actually, Some people are that way. It's not that everybody is very greedy, actually. Everybody's not greedy. A lot of people who are content with normal things of desire, those people are more satisfied. They have more happiness, more joy, even though from the wealth point of view, they may not have that much of a wealth, but whatever wealth they have is bringing them happiness and joy. So that's pretty much what he's saying here, that desire is something that we can never satisfy, okay? There's no way that I can satisfy my desire. But what I can do is that I can always learn to be content, right? To be content. Is it content or content? Content, to be content. So, like, like we usually give the example of, yogi, let's say. Yogi as in, a practitioner, Dharma practitioner, not as in realized or anything, but a Dharma practitioner who is fully contained with very fewer things. Actually, it is not, we only don't have to think about Dharma practitioner. Whoever is happy with fewer things, right? Those are the people with containment, I guess, containment, right? So I can really be satisfied, be happy with fewer things, or I can not be or happy with many things. So what is the point of having so many things actually when you're not happy? So it's not about things, how many things you have or how much wealth you have. It's about my own contentment, I think, right? If I'm content, then I'm content. If I'm not content, no matter how rich I may be, I'm never content, meaning I'm never happy. So then that actually kind of proves that wealth do not really bring us happiness or joy, but our own state of the mind, the containment, the satisfaction of, having those wealth is really the source of happiness, the satisfaction. Okay, so that's what he's saying. We should learn to be satisfied whatever minimum wealth we may have, because that is really the true source of happiness.
Bueno, ahora vamos con el verso 21 que dice: los placeres sensuales son como el agua salada. Cuanto más se bebe, más se aumenta la sed. Abandonar de una vez las cosas que engendran apego es la práctica de los bodhisattvas. Y bueno, pues aquí claramente está usando un ejemplo que podemos entender fácilmente de cómo con el agua salada pues no podemos satisfacer nuestra sed. Esto mismo sucede con las cosas materiales, digamos. Quiero algo nuevo y creemos que el tener eso nuevo va a satisfacer mi deseo, pero pues ya sabemos que eso no funciona así. Obtenemos lo nuevo y al poco tiempo queremos algo más nuevo, algo más atractivo, más lo que sea. Entonces compramos o conseguimos esa otra cosa y al poco tiempo también necesitamos algo más. Y esto es una cadena sin fin, digamos. Entonces, el antídoto al deseo no es sucumbir ante él y tratar de satisfacerlo por medio de acceder a todo lo que el deseo pide, sino generar un estado de satisfacción con lo que se tiene, ¿sí? Contenernos contenernos y contentarnos con lo que tenemos. Por ejemplo, el dinero. Puede ser que tengamos suficiente dinero para vivir una vida placentera y agradable, pero la inmensa mayoría de la gente que está en esta situación no se relaja, no se tranquiliza, sino que sigue trabajando y acumulando dinero. Ahora, no todos son avaros. Algunos están satisfechos con su dinero y viven una vida tranquila. Pero pues lo que tenemos que entender acá es que el deseo es imposible de satisfacer. O sea, si nos vamos por ese camino, pues nunca va a ser suficiente. Pero yo sí puedo aprender a estar satisfecho con lo que tengo sin necesidad de darle rienda al deseo de querer otras cosas. Por ejemplo, podemos ver a un yogi, o un yogi entendido como alguien practicante del Dharma, no como alguien de alta realización. Esta persona puede estar totalmente contenta con muy poquitas posesiones materiales, ¿sí? Con muy pocas cosas. Entonces, podríamos decir, si puedo estar contento con muy poco, ¿por qué buscar grandes cantidades? Y por el contrario, si tener grandes propiedades y grandes cosas no me hace feliz, entonces, ¿para qué seguir buscándolas? Aquí nos debemos dar cuenta entonces que el dinero no trae la felicidad, ¿sí? Y así podemos eh, des, engancharnos del dinero y de la avaricia y aprender a estar satisfechos con lo que tenemos. Okay.
All right, so now number 22, right? 22. Yes, instruction number 22. It's about, losing attachment to dualistic clinging. So like the root text says everything that we see outside as outside object are actually manifestation of our own mind. But the mind that manifests all these outer object itself is empty of inherent existence. Mind itself is an illusion, itself is, empty of any kind of nature whatsoever. That is why, by realizing that how everything is mind and how mind is also empty of inherent existence, one must therefore, give up attachment to this notion of, of phenomena, to this notion of self, to this notion of outer object and inner mind. We have this dualistic clinging, many of the dualistic clinging. So in a way here, this is about, and in some way, this is Mahamudra, of course, he's saying that, the the way that we can reach to the state of the Mahamudra is by losing attachment to this dualistic clinging, by realizing that both the mind and the object are same being nature of emptiness. Okay.
Bueno, entonces vamos con el verso 22, que dice así: lo que sea que aparezca es tu propia mente. Tu mente desde el principio ha estado libre de extremos fabricados. Entendiendo esto, no tomar para ella conceptos de objeto o sujeto es la práctica de los bodhisattvas. Y aquí pues lo que nos trata de decir este verso es que todo lo que nosotros percibimos es una fabricación de nuestra mente, ¿sí? Pero también nos dice que nuestra mente tampoco tiene existencia inherente. Digamos, este verso podría clasificar como Mahamudra, en la que nos está recordando que mente y objeto, ambos, son vacíos de naturaleza intrínseca, de existencia intrínseca, y que por consiguiente ninguno debe ser un objeto al cual tratemos de apegarnos, ni a la mente, ni a los objetos que se manifiestan en esa mente. Okay.
In this book, the instruction number and the verse number are different, right? Are different, okay? So that was instruction number 22, right? Just now we did instruction number 22, is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Mm-hmm. And verse number 24, I guess. Okay. Anyways, so now we're going to the instruction number 23rd. It's very similar. So instruction number 23rd again is about, losing attachment to to the concept of true existence. Okay, so we somehow, or ordinary people, have this notion that everything is true. So here we have clinging to happiness, we have clinging to joy. Why? Because we believe that all these things are real and true. So here in the instruction, he's saying that we need to know that all of these, happiness, joy that we experience are not true. The way we believe, that is not the way how we believe. They do not exist the way how we believe, actually, because they're false. So it's actually really very important, actually, here. This one is the clinging of true existence, right? We have this clinging of existence being true. So therefore, we have this clinging towards our feelings, such as like joy and happiness, and we cling that this joy and this happiness, everything is real. So here he's referring to that, saying that no, they are not real. They are actually, illusion. Everything is an illusion. Everything's false. Once when we realize how these appearances and these feelings of happiness, joy, and everything are just an illusion, just, how they lack any true nature in them, is how we will be able to get rid of this attachment to these, beautiful feelings, actually, to these beautiful feelings of the joy, happiness, and all that. So that's why we need to, through learning, reflecting, and meditating, we need to realize how all these phenomenon and the experiences that we are told phenomenon are not real, are just, I guess, an illusion. Okay.
Bueno, entonces, recuerden, en este texto, el número del verso no corresponde al número de la instrucción. En este momento, acabamos de leer en el pasado la instrucción número 22, pero eso corresponde al verso número 24, porque al principio hay dos versos que no son instrucciones. Entonces, pues, por eso no corresponde. Ahora vamos con el verso número 23, que dice: cuando encuentres objetos atractivos, a pesar de que se vean hermosos, como un arco iris en verano, no mirarlos como reales. Abandonar el apego es la práctica de los bodhisattvas. Y aquí a lo que se refiere este verso es que debemos perder el apego a todo concepto de existencia verdadera, ¿sí? La gente ordinaria trabaja con el concepto de que todo es real, que el sufrimiento es real, que la felicidad es real, pero resulta que nada de estas apariencias existe como nosotros las vemos, ¿sí? El apego o el aferramiento a la existencia verdadera o real de la felicidad y del gozo también nos trae sufrimiento. ¿Por qué? Porque felicidad y gozo tampoco tienen existencia inherente, son ilusiones, ¿sí? Entonces, el no desarrollar apego a estas emociones de felicidad o de gozo que estamos buscando como objetos de deseo, lo logramos por medio del aprender, reflexionar y meditar, ¿sí? Entonces, así como el sufrimiento no tiene existencia inherente, el gozo o la felicidad samsárika tampoco lo tienen. Son meras ilusiones.
Actually, 24th is very similar. Here in the 23rd, he gave this example of rainbow. Usually rainbows are considered very beautiful, right? But rainbow on its own is an illusion. In the same way, all these beautiful things that we see, that we experience, are an illusion, is what he's saying, correct? Now in the 24th, verse number 24th is actually reversed. Verse number 24th is about suffering. So like all the sufferings are, here it is compared to a dream. In a dream, one sees that one's only child has died. And then because in your dream, you do not realize that it's just a dream, and you take it for real. And in your dream, you experience, a real suffering, because you experience a real, let's say, a real existence of that child. But when you wake up, and then when you understand that it was just a dream and it was not real, because of the realization that it was just an illusion, there was no son and there was no death of a son. When you realize that, one is relieved from that pain or suffering that one actually has gone through, so to speak. So 2 examples. I mean, there are these different, the source is same, as you can see. In both the case, during the awakened state and during the dream state, the reason one experienced happiness and joy, the reason one experienced all the pain, is because of that notion of those being true, those experiences being true. That's actually only the reason. So when one is able to get rid of that notion of true, that notion of everything being real and true, one no longer, either in dream or in reality, will experience suffering, because we don't have the cause of suffering, which is the notion of everything being real or true. Okay.
Bueno, entonces en el 23, el autor usó el ejemplo de un arco iris. Un arco iris es algo muy, muy bonito, pero pues sabemos claramente que un arco iris no tiene existencia inherente. El 24 es un verso similar, pero en vez de enfocarse en la ausencia de existencia inherente de las cosas bonitas o de las emociones de felicidad, se refiere a las del sufrimiento y las compara con un sueño. Entonces el verso 24 dice: todas las formas de sufrimiento son como un sueño de muerte en un niño. Tomar tales ilusiones como reales, qué desgaste. Por ello, cuando te encuentres en situaciones difíciles, verlas como ilusiones es la práctica de los bodhisattvas. Y acá entonces lo que nos dice es que nosotros podemos tener el sueño de que nuestro hijo está muriendo, y eso nos produce pues un gran sufrimiento, pero cuando nos despertamos nos damos cuenta que ni tenemos un hijo, ni el hijo estaba muriendo, y por consiguiente no debería haber sufrimiento, y nos deshacemos de la causa del sufrimiento al darnos cuenta que no había, o nos deshacemos del sufrimiento al darnos cuenta que no había causa para dicho sufrimiento, ¿sí? La razón del sufrimiento entonces es por la creencia en la existencia inherente de ese sufrimiento, el no verlo como una ilusión, sino verlo como algo real. Entonces, realmente el sufrimiento no está en el hecho en sí, sino en la imputación sobre su existencia que nosotros le hacemos, el verlo como real. Ok, Khempo.
Okay, so so yes, I mean, this actually is very, I mean, these, you know, last few 4 lines are, as you can see, is really very profound teaching. It mainly talks about how to get rid of this notion or this concept of everything being real, this clinging that we have, you know, thinking that everything is real. Like we have this clinging of the phenomenon, everything being real. We have this clinging that person being real. So this kind of clinging of phenomenon being real, this person being real, this appearance being real, the whole world being real is the source of samsara. So if we want to get rid of samsara, then we really need to, you know, get rid of this clinging to this, you know, concept of everything being real. So to do that, then yes, same, we have to learn, reflect, and meditate. The actual antidote for this is Vipassana meditation, not the Shamatha meditation, but the Vipassana meditation. From 2 kinds of meditation, the one that can help us, we can call it analytical meditation or the Vipassana meditation, insight meditation, is the actual antidote, the root antidote for overcoming of these kind of clingings and this kind of notion of everything being real.
Estas últimas 4 líneas, digamos, son muy profundas, ¿sí? Y nos hablan de que nosotros mantenemos, digamos, un aferramiento a la realidad y vemos a las personas como reales, a las cosas como reales, sí, a todo lo que nos rodea como real. Y esa es, digamos, la base del samsara, de la existencia condicionada y del sufrimiento. Podemos liberarnos por medio de dejar ese aferramiento a la realidad, ¿sí? Y el proceso para poder dejar el aferramiento a la realidad está basado en los 3 aspectos de primero aprender, después reflexionar y después meditar. Y cuando aquí hablamos de meditación, no nos estamos refiriendo a la meditación Shine, sino a la meditación Vipassana o a la meditación analítica o a la meditación de la visión interior, que es la que nos permite ver la existencia irreal o la existencia ilusoria de todos esos fenómenos que nosotros vemos como algo muy concreto y realmente existente.
Okay, so I will stop here. But if you have any question, I'll take a few questions.
Entonces vamos a parar en este momento, pero si hay alguna pregunta, el Khempo estaría contento de poder contestarla. ¿Hay preguntas entonces?
Carlos, ¿tú me
Sí,
escuchas?
sí, te oigo.
¿Cómo estás? Yo quería, y al Khempo, hola Khempo, yo quería preguntarle al Khempo que si nos habla de la meditación interior.
Tema largo.
No, entonces, bueno, que nos dé una pequeña cosita, pues, sí.
The question, Khempo, is if you can talk a little bit about the Vipassana meditation.
Okay, we'll talk it in another session.
Sí, que prefiere hacerlo en otra sesión.
We'll talk about this in another session.
Realmente es un tema
Listo.
largo y profundo.
Listo, gracias.
¿Alguna otra pregunta? Llegó una pregunta por el chat. Entonces, existe la creencia en el mundo occidental de que no es posible controlar la totalidad de las emociones negativas, que siempre debemos vivir con una que otra emoción negativa. ¿Es cierto? Question, Khempo, is in the Western world, we have the idea that we cannot get rid completely of the negative emotions, that somehow we have to live with one or two or some of them. Is this true, that we cannot live without negative emotions?
Well, not according to Buddha's teachings, because otherwise we would not be talking about Buddha. Buddha as in being enlightened. So enlightened as in someone who has been able to completely get rid of all kinds of emotions from the root. So yes, it is 100% possible to uproot all kinds of emotion from the root.
Entonces, pues no, eso no sería verdad desde el punto de vista del budismo. En el budismo partimos de la base de que sí se puede liberar de todas las emociones perturbadoras. Si no fuera así, pues entonces no podríamos hablar de que existe el estado Buda, el estado totalmente libre de sufrimiento porque está libre de las emociones perturbadoras. Y como pues creemos que eso sí es posible y que existió un Buda y que podemos alcanzar ese estado, pues entonces no, desde el punto de vista del budismo no es cierto que estemos, digamos, esclavizados por las emociones perturbadoras. Hay una pregunta aquí. ¿Por qué si el sufrimiento y la felicidad son irreales, por qué se manifiestan y nos afectan tanto? The question, Khempo, is why, if suffering and happiness are illusions, why do they manifest and why do they affect us so much?
I only got, okay, so this, feelings. If the feelings are emotion, if feelings are illusion, why they appear, right? First question. Well, they appear because they're illusion, actually. We are able to experience them simply because they're illusion. If they're real, we'll never be able to actually experience them. Is that the first question? And then the second was what? Why? Okay, so it has two, the question, there were two kind of, questions in it. First, why, if they are illusion, appear, right? And what was the second? Like, why?
The question was, why, if suffering and happiness are illusions, why do they manifest and why do they affect us so much?
Yeah, so that's the answer, actually. They manifest because they're illusion. And they affect us because of our own, let's say because of our own confusion, but in this case, it means because of our own ignorant mind. Our ignorant mind sees it that way. Our ignorant mind sees emotions, and our ignorant mind also sees that it's affecting me. That's because bring of the ignorance.
Entonces, la felicidad y el sufrimiento se manifiestan precisamente porque son ilusiones. Y es por la ignorancia en nuestra mente que esas ilusiones las vemos como unas experiencias verdaderas. Pero, pues, Sí, la raíz de todo está en nuestra ignorancia, que nos hace ver esas apariencias como verdaderas y por consiguiente nos producen o felicidad o sufrimiento. Next question is, ¿cómo podemos observar la realidad de la no existencia inherente de los fenómenos sin caer en la complacencia de aspectos negativos como la violencia o la segregación? Question is, how can we observe the reality of the non-inherent existence of the phenomena without falling into the complacency of negative aspects like violence or segregation?
Okay. I kind of gave that answer before, that how can we realize emptiness? In short, I think they're saying emptiness. Emptiness is really gained through three wisdoms. There is no other way around it. Without developing the three wisdom, there is no way to gain the realization of the emptiness. So that's the cause of emptiness, the realization of non-existence of the phenomenon and everything. But it is true that sometimes our own confusion, our own ignorance unfortunately overpower our wisdom. So if they did overpower our wisdom, we may experience, wrong views. But then those wrong views are doing of our own confusion, our own ignorance. It's not the doing of the wisdom. So this is very much like, wisdom versus a confused mind. Confused mind manifests all of these things that we experience in the world, the violence or whatever you may call it. And I was just saying the wrong views, the wrong things, are really the doing of the confused state of the mind. So they are not related at all. They're two different experiences and they are not related. Like samsara and nirvana is not related because their causes are not related. Okay.
Entonces, pues de alguna manera el Khempo ya había dado la respuesta, dice, la respuesta está basada en las tres sabidurías, pero sí, resulta que a veces, digamos, nuestra confusión se sobrepone o sobrepasa nuestra sabiduría y entonces aparecen las visiones erróneas. Y entonces una mente confusa sí percibe, digamos, la violencia y todo lo malo. Pero pues aquí hay que entender que son dos experiencias, digamos, que no están relacionadas. Samsara y Nirvana son experiencias diferentes y no están relacionadas porque sus causas no están relacionadas. Ahora viene otra pregunta. Cuando nos quedamos en las apariencias, ¿cuál es la diferencia en reconocer la pobreza o la riqueza en el otro? When we abide in the appearances, what is the difference in recognizing the poverty or the wealth in the other?
I'm not sure if I understand that question actually.
Sí,
I really didn't get that question.
Sí, el Khempo no la entiende y yo tampoco la entiendo. No sé si Libardo nos pueda aclarar un poco más o si pasamos a la siguiente. Next question says, in the actual situation in the world, should be we worried if we know that everything is an illusion and also impermanent?
Should we be worried?
We worried, let's say with the coronavirus
Yes,
situation
yes, we
and
should
the
be worried. We should be
economic
worried. Because
crisis.
illusion, yes, we should be worried because illusion is also, you know, is true as an illusion. Like dream was true as a dream. So this reality that we are experiencing, even though it is an illusion, but it affects us. So if it affects us on a very illusion level, we should be worried too.
Mhm.
So yes, but there are ways to do with that, but it is, we cannot deny this actually. We cannot deny this world that we're living in, this thing that we are going through, saying that it's just an illusion. It's not saying that you should deny it, as that actually is wrong. But there are ways of approaching them, and there are ways of dealing with them, you know. So that's what we have been learning, like dealing, these are illusions. So if we dealt with them with this attitude of illusion-like attitude, perhaps there is a help there, right? So,
Entonces, sí debemos preocuparnos con la situación mundial que estamos viviendo, porque el que sea una ilusión no le quita, digamos, al sufrimiento, porque la ilusión de sufrimiento lo experimentamos como algo real. De hecho, pues no está bien negar el sufrimiento diciendo, no, eso es solo una ilusión, porque mientras estemos sujetos a la ilusión, las ilusiones nos pueden producir felicidad o sufrimiento. Entonces sí deberíamos estar preocupados y sí deberíamos tratar de solucionarlo, digamos. La siguiente pregunta dice, desde el punto de vista budista, ¿cómo se puede describir la impaciencia y cuál es la mejor forma de ser más pacientes? Entonces, the question is, from a Buddhist point of view, how we can describe impatience, and what's the best way to be more patient?
this we actually talked about. It's not different. There is no Buddhist perspective or, you know, perspective of any religion when it comes to emotions. Emotions are really same. We're talking about anger actually. Same thing. So religions, as far as emotions are concerned, every religion has, you know, the same point of view when it comes to that. But yes, there are different ways how you deal with them. Like from Buddhist perspective, we can deal with them by, you know, through different types of meditation, on loving kindness, compassion, on impermanence nature of the mind itself, or you know, the illusion-like nature of the mind itself. So whichever is more convenient or whichever is more effective to oneself, one should actually use those methods.
Entonces la respuesta es, realmente cuando estamos hablando de las emociones no debemos verlas desde un punto de vista religioso, digamos. No es que las emociones sean diferentes según la realidad, las emociones son las emociones. Ahora, desde el punto de vista del budismo, entonces sí podemos proponer algunas formas de trabajo, digamos, y podemos trabajar esta emoción de la impaciencia por medio del amor y la compasión, del amor bondadoso y la compasión por los seres que nos están causando impaciencia. También podemos utilizar las meditaciones que nos hacen reflexionar sobre la impermanencia de los fenómenos. Eso también aplaca la impaciencia. O también podemos trabajar con meditaciones sobre la naturaleza ilusoria de la realidad. ¿Sí? Entonces, es más bien un proceso en el cual nosotros vemos cuál es el tipo de meditación que más nos podría ayudar para trabajar con la impaciencia.
You know, I find reflecting on the law of karma very helpful when it comes to patience, actually, really. If I do really believe in karma, and if I do really understand karma, it really helps me to have some kind of patience in me, the ability to understand, why these things are happening to me. So when I understand that, then of course I will have more, realization about it. And then the intensity of my anger will be much more less, or maybe not there.
El Khempo dice que para él, en su caso, le sirve muchísimo reflexionar sobre el karma, sobre cómo funciona el karma, sobre cómo todo está interrelacionado por causas y condiciones. Y dice que entonces con ese entendimiento de cómo funciona el karma, entonces pues su ira o su impaciencia se disminuye y hasta llega a desaparecer por completo. Aquí está una aclaración de Libardo. Dice, el Khempo habla, si veíamos a una persona rica en apariencias y no veíamos su mente, difícilmente podríamos ver su pobreza. Es acerca de esa pobreza a la que se refiere la pregunta. ¿Cuál es la diferencia entre ver la riqueza en una persona aparentemente pobre y ver la riqueza en una persona aparentemente rica? Okay, this is the clarification about the previous question. You were talking about seeing a rich person and the appearance of that rich person, and not seeing his mind or her mind. And in that way, we would seldom see the poverty, the real poverty of the mind of this rich person.
Yes,
so
yes, it's true.
And that's the poverty that we were referring the question to. Now, what is the difference in seeing the wealth in an apparent poor people, or see the wealth in an apparent rich people?
It's two different things. There's outer wealth, and that's actually more about outer wealth. And the poverty is, there are two kinds of poverty. Poverty regarding the outer wealth, and poverty regarding the mental poverty. So from the mental poverty's point of view, we are all same. There's no rich, there's no poor. Everyone has that mental poverty state of the mind, right? But as far as the physical wealth is concerned, of course, that's how we decide who is rich and who is poor. Those people who have more physical wealth are termed as rich, and those who have less are termed as poor. But that do not really decide the actual meaning of poverty from the state of the mind, right? So this is two different things.
Sí, entonces, bueno, son dos cosas diferentes, ¿sí? A nivel externo, pues obviamente sí podemos hablar de riqueza y de pobreza. Y a nivel interno, o digamos también la pobreza, perdón. La pobreza podría ser una pobreza externa, manifestada como falta de cosas materiales, o una pobreza interna. Entonces, con respecto a la pobreza externa, pues obviamente hay muchas diferencias. Hay gente que tiene mucho dinero y hay gente que tiene poco dinero. Pero con respecto a la pobreza interna, todos somos iguales, en el sentido que mientras no estemos iluminados, pues todos tenemos la misma mente pobre, la misma mente confusa, que ve lo irreal como real, y que ahí tiene las causas de sufrimiento. Entonces se refiere a eso, a que no nos damos cuenta de que internamente todos somos igualmente pobres, que externamente, obviamente hay unos con más plata y menos plata y otros con menos plata, y que nos basamos más en esa diferencia que en esa igualdad interna.
So it's a good question, actually. I'm thinking that, mental poverty is experienced not because of lack of physical wealth, but because of lack of satisfaction. You can be as poor as a beggar, but yet you can be very contained person. Then you can be as rich as Zambala, but at the same time, mentally, because of lack of mental poverty, you will have mental poverty state of the mind. So this really depends on that. Like earlier we talked about satisfaction, lack of satisfaction, or having the satisfaction, the mental poverty.
Sí, entonces pues es una buena pregunta la de Libardo, porque realmente la pobreza que nos interesa no es la pobreza externa, sino la pobreza interna. Nosotros podríamos ser tan pobres como un pordiosero y tener una mente satisfecha, o podríamos ser tan ricos como Shambhala y tener una mente totalmente insatisfecha. Entonces, la pobreza que nos debería preocupar es la interna y no la externa.
Okay, so I think we'll stop here for today. And if there's any question, we'll do it in the next session or next Sunday, coming Sunday, because it's a bit, late. But I think it was also long for people. So I wish you all a very good Sunday, rest of the Sunday, and please keep practicing. In the very beginning, when we started that, I, suggested that it's good for you guys to do, White Tara and Amrita use practice. And I suggest that you please do that, and I very much think that it's very, needed at this point of time. So please remember to do that. And if you cannot do both, you can alternate. Sometimes you can do the White Tara, and other times you can do the Amrita use practice. So please don't forget that. Along with all these teachings and practice, it's also very good to, to do some meditation of this, yidam, so to speak, yidam practices. Since you have the empowerment and instruction and everything, so therefore, why not, we put that into practice, so that, along with us, we can also, help other people as well. So that please keep that in mind. And you all have a very, wonderful remaining Sunday, I guess it's Sunday morning right there. And be safe and be precautious, because the coronavirus is still out there, but don't be too, too extreme about it. Think you don't make your mind too intense, thinking too much about this coronavirus, that how it's affecting the world. Don't go into all those things, okay? Whatever the karma is there, as far as the world is concerned, it will happen. So we should not get too much into all this. This country is affected and that country is affected. That don't listen to so many of those things. It's actually not so very useful, so very benefit now, because we know what is the sickness, and we know it's out there, and we know it's kind of really affecting the world in a bad way. We don't need to know so much more. So don't listen to so many newses, and then, just make yourself more concerned about those things. Instead, focus a little bit more on practice, a little bit more on Dharma, since now you may have more time, or in some other, use your time for some other things. So don't really pay too much attention, because what is the point? What will it do if I just got too worried or too concerned about the world? It won't help. Even about Colombia itself, what can you really do? I mean, all we can do is worry, which will then sort of only will affect maybe your health. And we don't want that, right? Because if our state of the mind is affected, that can affect our health. So this right now, we don't really want, our health to be affected, since the body and the mind are sort of, combined. There's a combination, it's kind of synchronized. So mind does affect the body. So try to be more positive about it, and try to not think too much about this situation. And then, just keep thinking more, do more, mantra chantings, like Chinese or any other mantra chantings. That will really hopefully bring more positivity to our mind, and less stress, less fear our mind. So don't be so very fearful about it.
Bueno,
Okay,
entonces por ahora vamos a terminar. Si hay más preguntas las contestaremos dentro de 8 días, pero pues ya está tarde para mí y también ha sido largo para la gente. Al principio, cuando empezamos, les comenté que hicieran la práctica de tara blanca o de ermitaños, que son dos prácticas que sirven para alargar la vida. Entonces sería bueno que las pudieran hacer ambas, pero pues si no las pueden hacer ambas, entonces hacer una o hacer la otra o estar cambiando, digamos. Eso es bueno, eso complementa entonces el estudio que estamos haciendo, todas, digamos, estas meditaciones analíticas del estudio, lo podemos complementar entonces con la práctica. Y algunos de ustedes pues ya han recibido las iniciaciones y tienen todas las instrucciones para hacer estas prácticas, entonces háganlas. De esa manera nos podremos ayudar a nosotros mismos y también ayudar a los demás. Por ahora, mantengan la precaución, el virus sigue circulando y debemos ser precavidos, pero pues no debemos tampoco caer en el extremo del miedo y de la preocupación. En últimas, pues el karma determinará qué es lo que sucederá tanto a nivel individual como a nivel de país. Entonces, pues no vale la pena estar pegados de las noticias y estarnos preocupando constantemente. Con eso no ganamos nada. Pues porque no podemos hacer nada para cambiar la situación externa, digamos. Eso está más allá de nuestro alcance. Entonces, ¿para qué? ¿Para qué llenarnos la mente con preocupaciones? La mente afecta al cuerpo y pues desde ese punto de vista no vale la pena poner impresiones negativas en nuestra mente que nos puedan afectar nuestra salud. Por el contrario, sí es bueno repetir muchos mantras. Los mantras son una protección mental. Esto nos rebajaría el estrés, nos rebajaría el miedo que podamos tener y nos daría un mayor bienestar. Entonces, muchas gracias. Les deseo que tengan una buena semana y que estén muy bien. Thank you very much, Khempo.
Khempo, gracias.
Thank you, Khempo.
Carlos, gracias.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Very much.
Khempo, gracias.
Khempo.